getting those drivers integrated into this image-based patching. I'm going to cover that as well. My name is Marc Huppert. I'm a principal consultant, principal architect at Computer Center in Germany. I'm personally doing the VMware stuff since 25 years. I started with ESX 1.0. Good old days. Long time gone. So we're talking about lifecycle management overview, the integration of Dell OpenManage. The reason why I'm covering Dell OpenManage, because my entire home lab runs on Dell, and that's the reason why I needed an option to do ESXi patching, firmware updates, as well as vGPU driver updates in any automated fashion. Activity, upgrade vSphere. Lifecycle management, cluster images, software across all hosts. But how should we integrate those hardware vendor packages? Several years ago, when VMware introduced the old update manager, now called old update manager, we had the opportunity to integrate vendor packages. But does it really work well? Nope, not really. The new one, the image-based option, we have the lifecycle manager. Basically, it's the same code like the old update manager, enhanced in a few parts. So when talking about lifecycle management, I'm going to talk about creating our own images. We have the ESXi image, the base version, components, vendor add-ons, and then firmware and driver add-ons. The lower parts are easy. The vendor parts are covered from VMware. So the vendors shipping their software to VMware, it's just a list you can choose. But how to integrate firmware? When you're going to try it without having hardware support managers installed, the list is just empty. You can't choose anything. The reason is it requires HSMs, and today I'm going to covering 2 HSMs. One, not so new, the Dell OpenManage plugin. The other one's pretty new. We're going to need another appliance, this time from NVIDIA, the NVIDIA GPU Manager appliance. If you're running NVIDIA GPUs, you know how to deal with downloading drivers. And there's an option downloading this appliance. I'm going to show it to you. So when talking about lifecycle management, we have image-based management on a cluster basis. Within Lifecycle Manager, we have the different image depots, so the ESXi versions, basically. So 8.0.3, newest version B, we have the option to install updates, to import ISOs for the old baseline version, and to configure settings. Nothing really new. Default vSphere admin stuff. Creating clusters and specifying an image is a requirement, this option. First, you need to enable single management. Then you could do the cluster configuration, which is the successor of the old host profiles. In the next version, there's not going to be no more host profiles. It's going to be just configuration profiles. Before applying configuration profiles, you must enable single image management. And for example, if you deploy VCF with the vCenter Express Storage architecture, image-based management is a hard requirement. You can't use it anymore with baselines. So you have to switch over. Some of our customers have mixed clusters in the past. For example, HPE, 3 different generations, generation 9, 10, and generation 11 in one cluster. EVC mode and everything is done. It worked with baselines. That doesn't work with image-based option. And when I first teach the vSphere 8 What's New training several years ago, I had customers from Switzerland who were totally shocked because they complaining how to do it in mixed cluster environments. The official answer is don't do mixed cluster environments. So each cluster has to be its own kind of hardware. This customer has to create 3 different clusters right now to use the image-based cluster option. So when configuring a cluster image, first of all, I'm on the cluster side, updates, edit, And then I could define the ESXi version, vendor add-on, firmware and driver add-ons. From my personal opinion, I never ever installed any vendor add-on. At any customer, none of my home lab servers has it. The reason why? I don't need it. For what kind of reason do I need a vendor add-on? In the past, there are several vendor add-ons that had memory leaks in it. So after 90 days, after 72 days, ESXi host needs a reboot to get free up memory, all this kind of stuff. I never want to deal with that. But it's your decision if you're going to install a vendor add-on. The interesting part comes from the hardware support managers. And this is a screenshot of the official documentation. Several of the major OEM develops and supply hardware support managers. For example, Dell, HP, Lenovo, Hitachi, and Cisco. This is officially. So now reality, I know only these two is going to work. The others simply don't work. The list is just empty. For Dell, you have to apply or deploy the Dell OpenManage appliance. In the past, you had to configure the OpenManage integration for VMware vCenter. A special scenario and a special setup was needed, and special licenses were needed. Dell changed that, I think 1.5 years ago. Now we have OpenManage with an integration, with a plug-in in there, with an integration for VMware vCenter. For HPE, you have to deploy one view, and you have to license it entirely to get it working. The other ones, they had it officially. I tested and I tried it, but none of the others are going to work. My personal test. So we're going to talk about the OpenManage Enterprise plugin as well as the NVIDIA GPU Manager plugin. Those are my two plugins that are hardware support managers. I have installed other plugins as well, Runecast, for example, for checking compliance of the environment, or my Synology storage console. Synology does produce NAS systems that are officially on the VMware HCL. So I have rack versions, full all flash, connected with 25 gigs. There is an official plug-in to manage it through vSphere Web Client. You can't really do much of it, but you can see how much space is left and if there's anything wrong going on with your NAS system. So everything I'm trying to show you guys now is based on my home lab. It's not really a home lab, to be honest. It's a home data center. I'm running 3 different data centers at my house. 880 CPU cores, 39 physical ESXi hosts. None of them are running 24/7. Only 5 of them run in 24/7. And those 5 consume 30,000 kilowatt hours of energy. None of this is sponsored by anyone. It's all self-paid. Why? It's an investment into my career. It's an investment into myself. Without that environment, I wouldn't be able to pass all the different exams that I passed. Right now, I have 213 Credly badges from all the different vendors. I'm a certification junkie. I'm a VMware certified instructor as well, and most of the time my students at trainings asking me, what's going to be in that exam? Several years ago, I said, I have no idea. And then I changed it and I did every single VMware, Dell, NVIDIA, Intel, Cohesity, and all the other guys' certifications. Without the environment to test it, there's going to be no way you pass, for example, all the VCAPs or become a VCDX, for example. So 30,000 kilowatt hours, I'm paying 33 cents per kilowatt hour. You can do the math. It's a lot of money going to my energy provider. So we're talking about hardware support managers. Starting with the Dell OpenManage Enterprise, it is a virtual machine. This VM doubled the resources of the previous version. 8 vCPUs, 64 gigs of memory. Could be a challenge in some of your home labs. You could stripe it down to the half and then try to fix it. Contact your Dell guys. It is possible to shrink it down. Right now, I'm using it inside my environment. This setup is able to manage 8,000 Dell servers or machines. I only have 39, but I'm still running it on the default resources. To use it, I'm sorry, those are German screenshots. I did the same presentation in a different one in Las Vegas. And then at Vegas, I asked, have you ever seen a German language configuration of Dell OpenManage? So first of all, you need the plugins. The OpenManage itself needs to be updated, and then there are several plugins within OpenManage Enterprise. The appliance itself is free. You could roll it out, you could deploy it. The main part, for this plugin, you can install it, but now comes the downside. It requires dedicated licenses on your Dell server, on each single one. What kind of license? That was my first question. When Dell comes up with that kind of licensing, how to do it and what's the configuration needed. We need to go to each single server, to IDREC, getting the configuration of licenses. If you start this window, don't click on this plus icon. Normally there's a plus icon. Because if you click, you're losing the option to add licenses. I have customers who are trying to find where to upload those licenses. They bought it from Dell. They can't figure out how to do it because every time they click on license, they click on the first plus icon to expand this, and now the option to add license is gone. So click on minus, then there's an action button, add license. Kind of strange. So every normal server has IDREC Enterprise license. We need that OpenManage Enterprise with Advanced Plus license. So any kind of strange naming convention for this license. In the past, if you have older Dell servers, there was an OpenManage integration for VMware vCenter, OME4V called. This was the old license. Dell had a transition program where you, as a customer, could configure or transfer the license from the old one to the new one. That transfer period is over. Right now, you have to pay 500 euros per physical server to get that license. And that license is required to do firmware updates within the vSphere client. That's the downside. So we need that license. When that license is applied, and you do an inventory scan inside OpenManage Enterprise, a new group gets created. OpenManage Enterprise VMware vCenter group. And only those servers with this license in place shows up here. That's the first requirement. Without that license, you can't go further. License there, group is going to be created, then we could go ahead. We need to configure inside OpenManage Enterprise, click on plugins, and then OME4V plugin configuration. We need to register the vCenter. We can register up to 15 vCenters, maxed out. OpenManage Enterprise can handle 8,000 servers, but this plugin can only handle 15 vCenters. Right now, I'm running 6 vCenters at my environment. So probably the next 3 years, something like that, I could max out this one. Then you need to deploy another OpenManage Enterprise appliance. There's an extra option for advanced monitoring that is used for the Dell OpenManage Management Pack for area operation. If you want to monitor your physical servers inside vRobs, you have to activate this advanced monitoring. The reason behind that, it took more resources inside the OpenManage appliance. So If you want to do it at home and shrink down your appliance, it's okay, but you can't use that. It's a dedicated feature that needs to be enabled. And then we switch to the vSphere client, choose this enterprise plugin, and there's host and chassis. And you're licensed, and inside the group within OpenManage, those machines showed up here. And then we are able to create, strange name, create baselines. We're talking about image-based, and we need to create baselines. Baselines from the view of OpenManage plugin. Those baselines, in my case, are based on the default internet-based Dell catalog. So when a new firmware is available, it shows up, small XML file is downloaded onto the appliance, and then it shows up, your machine needs firmware updates. Those baselines are created here, and then we create this repository profile. I have customers who use air-gapped environments or don't want to use the default internet connection. You can configure offline repositories. You have a download machine, download all the stuff, put it in a share, and put the share over there. It is possible. Now, how to integrate the firmware into ESXi update management. The main reason of this talk. ESXi version, vendor add-on, firmware and driver add-ons. If you click on it, and you're going to do it without a hardware support manager, that list is empty. You must choose here your hardware support manager. Only when you have Dell OpenManage in place with ID-Rec licensing, the group configured, the host visible, then you can choose this plugin and your configured firmware baselines within the plugin showed up. And then it's an easy part. I have R740s and 740XD machines in my environment. So that's my main servers, 29 of them. I could choose this, select it, and we can see firmware compliance, BIOS version right now, image version. So inside an ESXi image is now firmware updates included. Does that mean we have fewer reboots? Nope. It is just the configuration from one place. So ESXi updates, including firmware updates within vSphere client. The dream of every vSphere administrator. Comes true. But what's going to happen if we have GPUs? And especially NVIDIA GPUs. The driver side is always tricky. Quick boot doesn't work. You have to do full reboot. Installation is an easy part, but updating vGPU drivers could be challenging. The reason? Maintenance mode, uninstall driver, reboot. Maintenance mode, install new driver, reboot. Do it on a server, for example, with 6 terabytes of memory. It could take hours to do it. So how to integrate that? The secret sauce, NVIDIA's GPU Manager appliance. Who of you have ever heard about that? Yep. Same for me. Like one of my NVIDIA friends told me, hey, we have a new appliance. You can download it. I said, not another appliance, come on. What should I do with it? And he said, test it out. You deploy this appliance, resources are fairly low, and then you register vCenter, a new plugin showed up. And when you click on that new plugin, the first thing you need to do anything is to apply an NVIDIA licensing portal API key. That thing is not going to work with username or password. You have to log in inside your NVIDIA licensing portal, click on API and create one. That API key needs to be applied here to make this appliance available to see what kind of vGPU drivers or NVIDIA AI enterprise drivers for VCF private AI environments are available on the NVIDIA site. That's only what's available. Then you click the driver you want and click on download selected. Took some time, then the different versions showed up under Manage Drivers. And this configuration, we have vCenter, the plugin itself. You need to choose non-driver downloads at the NVIDIA website. Then you can find this appliance. It's a default OVA. Deploy it, register vCenter, plugin show up, create an API key from the NVIDIA licensing website, and then you could click the different vGPU's drivers for your ESXi version that you need. Actually, there's Grid version 17, the actual one. There's a hidden beta right now for Grid version 18 for Microsoft Servers 2025, including GPU right now. Those drivers are not listed here because they are on a hidden website on the NVIDIA side. So when I have downloaded the driver, it shows up as managed drivers with the driver version, the product release, and all the different information. And that one can be accessible on the image creation under components, customized components, and then the NVIDIA drivers showed up here. And the update is totally easy. Because within an ESXi, image-based patching will no longer, not we, VMware is no longer transferring individual patches to the ESXi host and executing them. You're changing the entire boot bank every time. That's the reason behind image-based patching. And when you change the entire boot bank, you can easily change NVIDIA drivers in that boot bank before applying it. And that's the point NVIDIA is going to do here. So 2 reboots for getting a new ESXi version with new NVIDIA drivers. That's one reboot. And the other one is Dell firmware updates. That's the second reboot that's going to be needed. So we can make the configuration happen. For example, I have several GPUs run in my environment. This is the newest one, the L4. We see this graphic device in the vSphere client. The configuration itself, share direct to use it for vGPU to make the driver happen. And then a new version, a new modified scenario comes up that's new and that's supported only on the newer GPUs. It's the first time ever you can configure vGPU in mixed size mode. So one guy is going to need it for VDI with 2 gigs of video memory. One is going to use an AI workload on it with, let's say, 16 gigs of memory. It can be combined now on one card. But that feature depends on your physical GPU. It doesn't work with the older ones. That's the reason why I'm showing you the screenshot on the L4, where I can configure that. And then, normal on the ESXi host, NVIDIA SMI is going to tell you what kind of driver have you installed, the performance of your card, the wattage that's gonna took, the power, as well as the different processes. So the activity in the beginning of my talk was updating vSphere, easy part. But it could be hard to combine it with firmware updates as well as vGPU upgrades. Right now, the solution, and this is my last slide, Lifecycle Manager can do it. There are prerequisites that you guys need to configure. Dell OpenManage, the plugin is needed, or HPE OneView with a plugin needed. If you have other hardware stuff than those, I'm going to pray for you. So if you could make it happen, send me a note. I was not able to. And I'm contacting all the different vendors. Those vendors, the salespeople telling me, we have an integration. I said, yeah, but it's not going to work. Oh, we heard the first time. Tell me a customer that use it. None of those vendors ever tell me of one customer. On the marketing side, on the bullshit side, they're telling we have an integration. In reality, the only integration, the really working integration is Dell OpenManage. HPE has some downsides, and if you're using NVIDIA GPU, download the GPU manager, configure it, and then it's an easy part. Single image, including firmware as well as NVIDIA drivers. That's it. Thank you, guys.